Global financial epidemic is what we are facing right now, and this is being prevented by the Federal Reserve and their actions of quantitative easing and easy money policies. I will go into today why this is not going to last for much longer. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you today. Out of the Wall Street Journal, Dutch bank lawyer found dead in New York, suicide. Something that has been going on for over the years, and I've brought this up before. It's almost becoming an epidemic in itself, where you have multiple people in the finance industry and around that basically committing suicide at higher and higher rates. They are into some business that is either illegal or doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and they end up becoming bankrupt, and they end up getting themselves backed into a corner and oftentimes, unfortunately, committing suicide. Let's go into this. Out of the Social Security Administration, I always bring you the facts directly from the sources. 50% of wage earners had net compensation less than or equal to the median wage, which is estimated to be $28,000 a year. This means that half of the people in the United States are making only $28,000 a year. This cannot build a strong middle class. This cannot build a foundation for a recovery when the individuals are not receiving a wage that is keeping up with the cost of living. Our electricity prices, our food prices, the most important things are rising on average, and this is becoming a problem when our wages aren't rising accordingly. So that's obviously something that I like to bring up, but the mainstream media and the government will never. This is out of my book where I talked about this. Savings allow an individual to put aside their money to open businesses and make quality investments, but right now we don't have that. They are basically pushing interest rates all the way to zero, so you have to look for more risky investments like the stock market, and that's how they get the stock market to be pumped up. They also trap you by having your money in something that isn't as liquid as a bank account, and if you see your money declining, you'll be more likely to pump more money in like any gambler would. This is European statistics talking about 42 months in a row of downgrades, but they said, simultaneously saying that everything is just fine. They're going to fix it all. They actually increased the interest rates at some point, and that was a big mistake because the economy simply was not ready for that. In fact, all of these economies that are tied to the single currency, the euro, are in a huge mistake themselves because they can't grow out of it. It's not going to ever happen. Even Germany, who's recognized as being the strongest of all, is having their own issues right now, being with their growth. They have to downgrade their own growth estimates and so on. Europe is having the problem too. I want to make note here that all countries are facing a problem. You cannot get away from these problems. It is a global epidemic. Let's go on. Hillary Clinton said, "Don't let anybody tell you that businesses create jobs." That's right, because the government creates the jobs. It is not businesses, small businesses, just making up the highest percentage of the jobs. But of course, they want to change that. They want the government to be the nanny state. They want them to have all of the positions, and they want everything to be controlled by the fewer and fewer hands. That's why they have these favorable laws that basically the government can expand, and it makes it harder and harder for people to do their own businesses. They're removing all these what they call tax loopholes. Oftentimes those loopholes are only for the mega rich like Warren Buffett, and the individual small businessman has to be forced onto things like Obamacare, which is forcing them to have less employment and then give part-time employment to people who would have normally gotten full-time employment, just so they don't have to pay into that healthcare system. This is some information that I find very interesting. Millennials are one of the biggest generations in U.S. history. You can look at the chart there for yourself. What I'm finding now is that you look at the statistics of the student loan debt and all of the fact that they are not finding jobs. They are not even on the employment numbers because they never had a job in the first place in many cases, and then they graduate out of school with all this student debt, and then they never are able to get a job that is sufficient for them. They, like I said, don't end up on the unemployment numbers, but we have a huge group of these people who are not effectively getting into the economy itself. Big problem for down the road. out of Business Week, all the market needs is $200 billion a quarter from central banks. And if you think that's nothing, well, you must be Ben Bernanke or Janet Yellen, because $200 billion a quarter is enough to basically throw off the market and all semblance of reality. This is what's happening right now, where you have the stock market increasing in its nominal value, but it is simply being pumped up with this quantitative easing. It is finding its way into the stock market and is being pumped up not by individual investors, but by the central banks. Well, I've disclosed before how the central banks around the world are receiving incentives in order to invest in the stock market, and that is how it has been increasing over the past few years. This is out of ProPublica inside the New York Fed, secret recordings and a culture clash. You might have to read this article for yourself, but I just wanted to go into the fact that there is a lot of things that go on behind the Federal Reserve and behind all these financial companies here, that a lot of it doesn't get out into the public, but some of that was released with the limited audit of the Fed and other things that we've seen, I've discussed here. But essentially, there's so much more going on. We don't have a transparent system, so therefore it is fragile, it is prone to risk. So when you have your money in that system, you are taking that risk with your savings. That is the biggest problem, the one that I see taking place right now. We see as the increased volatility, as I've gone into in other videos. Increased volatility is a danger for myself, and I suggest that you look into that as well. This is sort of continuing on. The whites go to the SEC while Wall Street still owns Washington. And they're talking about many examples in this one, but I just wanted to show you this one. Mary Jo White, her fourth spin over 36 years through the revolving door at her corporate law firm. So they go back and forth between these companies and then work in positions in government. They're supposed to be there regulating, just like the FDA are supposed to be there regulating the food industry, but they're not, because the individuals from groups like Monsanto, or institutions like Monsanto and all the other big genetically modified food makers end up working in the highest positions in government, and then they'll go back to those other positions. So that is the revolving door, and they are not there to protect us. They are there to protect corporate interest, and that has been documented in this article right here. You can read for yourself. It's always in the description of the videos. Judicial apartheid, Wall Street's kangaroo courts. I'll just read you the very first line. It said, for the past 18 years, a motley mix of corporate law firms, Wall Street powerhouses, and private justice providers have been serving up false testimony to the highest court of our land, and its mandatory arbitration is inexpensive, fast, and fair, and a proper substitute for the public court system. You can read more in the article for yourself, but again, the court system, that judicial system, is also under the same problems as the Federal Reserve, which is supposed to be printing up our money for some strange reason, and the SEC, the FDA, all of the government's agencies here are all in this fraudulent game. And another huge issue on that, and this is California's drought right here. We're looking at California being the major exporter for much of the produce that comes out of there, and other things as well, of course. But if their drought continues, which is projected to be, we're looking at a major increase in the food prices that are coming out of California. The public is not ready for another surge in the increase in food prices. This is not just going to affect California, but even where I am in Canada, it's going to increase the prices, and the individuals where food compromises a small portion of their income, disposable income, it will then increase and cause a bigger burden. They will be able to buy less of the things that generate and stimulate the economy. This is what I see being a problem. People are not looking into the deeper facts and not realizing that what we have is a globalized system. All countries will fall. All dominoes will fall in line. It will happen because the system is set up to be the exact same way, all the way down from the local level up to the countries, and then the countries have to face the facts from the other supranational entities like the IMF, like the UN, when, and we are basically forced under their iron fist. This is a huge problem. Not enough people are talking about it. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to become an insider. The Insiders is where I give out all my best intel for free, and that is now over 1,000 people on there. So I want to say hello to all of you. I want to thank all of you for joining up, and if you want to get on there, it is at themoneygps.com. You scroll down to the bottom, fill in your email address, and you get occasional emails from me with good, short, concise info.